It's 1992. I'm 23 years old and we buy a Century 21 franchise. And I call my dad and say, what do I do? He says, buy it. And I'm following Mike Ferry, who's a real estate sales trainer 30 years ago. So Mike's 78 years old now. So he was 48 years old then. I'm 23. He's a guru. And my dad tells me to get educated by him. So I follow Mike Ferry and I sign up for his management recruiting school, which is run by a woman named Diane Dobbins. And Diane Dobbins was one of the smartest and scariest women I've ever met. But she was brilliant. And she worked for a company called Long and Foster. And she held a management training school, which I went to numerous times. And then I signed up for one-on-one coaching with her. And I coached her for years. And then I moved on to other people within her organization. And one of the things she taught me was real estate agents should do real estate. They shouldn't do back office work. So that's really how we started. Angelique, you remember these days. It was, why would a real estate agent input MLS? They should be talking to people. Why would a real estate agent take photographs and load them to MLS? They should be talking to people. So we kind of built the organization from the beginning where real estate agents are free to do real estate, not do admin stuff. But I think today, Chris, you're going to bring up a lot of points that you still need to know as an agent what goes on in the real world, even though you're not doing it, right? Because it's a symbiotic relationship. We work together. These people are helping you, you're helping them. And if that breaks the bond, then we have problems. So today's kind of
really true. It plays into the whole DISC thing too, because, generally salespeople are great in there, but they're not great at details, right? But then you've got the whole back office and we're all great at details. So it really is a team effort.
Well, you also, when you're dealing with some of the consumers and clients that you're dealing with, they're going to have a lot of questions. And when they're asking specific questions about timelines and why this happened and why that happened, and you're just trying to pull something out of your rear end to make it sound good, rather than knowing exactly what happened, what the process was, why it happened that way, what to expect, or even before that, setting the right expectation with the consumer as to what's going to happen. I mean, we'll get into this a little bit more, but just something like, well, how long is it going to take to get my property on the market? And it's a Friday and they want it on tomorrow. And you say, well, typically it's going to take at least 24 to 72 hours minimum to get a property on the market. But I usually want to have 3 to 7 days to be able to get through the entire process and make sure everything looks right. If you can say that and articulate that and understand why, it's going to put you in a more powerful position as to them saying, well, why is that? Why can't I have this? Somebody else can do it. They'll try this. They'll do that. We need to be able to understand that. So take a glimpse and see what's going on so you understand the processes.
Oh, and I'll share with you too. One of the things that drives me crazy is an agent who does understand the back office work will call me Friday night saying, I need admin access to MLS so I can load this listing. And Angelique will share with you, our system is so damn complicated. We don't just do MLS. And I think Sammy, you got a presentation going to show all the stuff that we do, but making a change to MLS is one thing, but we've got these other systems that Century 21 uses that promote others. It's called Dash, and then loading photographs to one thing and another. There's just so much that goes into everything that we do to do it right. And the one thing that happens, and this is back to my very, very beginning training, I don't care if you're Chris Reed or if you're any other agent in the company. As a broker for this company, I know damn well that John and Mary's listing is going to be treated the same way as Paul and Sue's listing, right? We deliver a consistent level of service across the board, which I guarantee you most brokerages don't have a clue. Can you imagine having 400 agents doing everything their own way and putting in MLS this way and that way and this way? And somebody puts in bedrooms and somebody doesn't put in bedrooms, and somebody puts this as taxes and CDDs and someone does this as CDDs and taxes separate. I mean, who knows?
We'd be out of business with all the fines we would be getting and all the lawsuits we would be having. We would have been in business 25 years ago.
Exactly.
No discount to the agents.
Every one of you online
Love you
sees it.
guys.
You all see it in other listings. You all see it with I hear you say it and we talk about it when you're looking at another listing and you see so the way something else looks or the way they put something in, and when they're like, well, that's not right. Why would they? Man, somebody's paying this person 6% to do that. And that's the product they put out. That's how it looks. That's how it read. That's how it got put online. I saw one the other day. It was put in for $3,500. It was a $3.5 million listing that was put in for $3,500.
I bet they got a lot of calls.
It blew my mind. And literally probably I went back and I looked 6 hours later, it still wasn't updated, and it got updated by the end of the day. I saw $3.5 million. So just know that when those things happen, the processes that are here, even if it was a mistake, because people make mistakes, I make mistakes. Everybody online here has made a mistake before. So this isn't saying that everything's going to be perfect all the time, but we have these systems in place to make sure that there's catches and there's there's catch falls there if something does happen. And then we get to review them and see them from many different eyes that are here, along with yours and your consumers, before it gets completely blasted out for all the world to see. And even if we did, we catch it much sooner than anybody else.
Yeah.
And
So
if we
there,
make a mistake, we stand behind it. When you make a mistake, you got to stand behind it.
we try to point it
Right.
out so it doesn't happen again. There are a lot of moving pieces behind the scenes, and with MLS, there's a lot of rules and there's a lot of stipulations, and they're not our rules. And we're not implementing them just to implement them. There are certain things that we can and cannot do, or the brokerage will be fine, right? Because the listing that we're inputting is the brokerages. At the end of the day, it belongs to the brokerage. The photos belong to the brokerage. So we are trying to set standards, and a lot of the things are just little things that we want to educate on, so simple mistakes don't happen, right? So it'll happen where somebody signs a listing agreement at 200,000, right? The listing agreement's the legal document that we go off of. And then they'll update the MLS data form to 220,000. And we go off the listing agreement because that's the legal agreement, and we'll enter it at 200,000. The listing
Just
goes
protecting
live.
me, by the way.
Right. So the listing goes live, and we get a frantic email from the listing agent saying, no, this is supposed to go out at 220,000. What happened? And we say, we go off of the listing agreement,
Mhm.
we'll update it for you now to make sure it's okay. And I know Jasmine's amazing at checking her email and finding that real quick and updating it for you. So for those of you who don't know, Jasmine is our listing coordinator. She enters 99% of our listings. She's been with us a little bit over a year now. And this is kind of her first, this is her first like Zoom with the with the morning.
We're real people back here. We're not
Yeah.
just on a computer screen. We are live.
Yeah. So, she's entering the bulk of all of these listings, and some of these things are just to help her and to help us facilitate everything. And I do have a little presentation I wanted to walk through. It doesn't cover everything, but it covers enough, and we can talk about it as we go.
And we
I
do
just
play
wanted to
by
say
the
real-
rules, so.
Well, it's kind of
I
like
just
while you're doing that, Sam. Jasmine, you talk. You never get to talk.
I'm sorry.
But
I just wanted to say real quick, at the end of the day, I just want to help everyone, every agent. I never want to be making a mistake. I hate it just as much as the agents do, getting a frantic email you did this wrong, you did this wrong. So at the end of the day, I want to help make this a seamless process so that everything that you're putting is everything that I'm putting. Because at the end of the day, I'm looking at your data form, and in a perfect world, your data form is 100% correct, and I'm doing 100% of what you're saying. But we'll show you in the process, in the slideshow, that when you guys leave something blank for whatever reason, sometimes we have defaults that we just put in. And maybe that's the reason why you don't like how something looks, but because MLS requires us to put a spot there, if that makes sense.
And the
fill
data
in
form
the
shows
field.
you that when it puts it in red.
Yeah.
So if you're not filling in the red things, then we got to make up stuff. Or it doesn't go live, and then you get mad at us for not going live. So,
Okay, let's see.
So really quick, since you're on that topic of the listing agreement and making a change to the listing agreement, I don't know if that's, I don't remember if I saw that in the slide, but what document would you want an agent to use to change the price of the listing agreement? Because that's what you go off of.
Yeah, so this happened yesterday with an agent, and he signed the listing agreement, and he emailed he forwarded email from his seller saying he wanted to raise the price. So that works. We just need written seller authorization. So they can either update the listing agreement and re-sign it. They can send an email. If you don't want to go through the process of re-signing it, they can do a listing status change form and submit it before time.
But that's,
Has to be
so that's
from
one of
the
my-
seller.
that's one of my questions. So the listing status change form is not a legal document like the listing agreement. It's an
It
MLS
is when
document,
it's signed and completed.
but it's not part of the listing agreement. It's part of MLS forms. So if you go off the listing agreement, which is the legal contractual document, can we add the modification to the listing agreement form? That's a Florida Association of Realtors form back to our
That's what
documents.
it is.
Yeah,
Chris was
that
talking-
is
it's the
in
same
dot
form
loop.
We're talking about.
If
Yeah,
it's signed.
It is in dot loop. It's under the Florida interactive
And
forms. but
can we
can
add
get
that
it
to our
in our main
template?
folder. Yeah.
Can we add that to our listing template? Because that's the
Okay.
legal, because we're not supposed to change a legal document. And one thing you said is we go back and change the price on the listing agreement. Well, that's a legally binding contract that's in full effect. And we
Mhm.
shouldn't be making a change to that document. And the listing status change form is an MLS form, not a listing form,
Mhm.
listing agreement contract. So we should be using the modification to the listing agreement to change the legal document. So if we can add that, that would be a real point of clarification, because that's the actual Florida Association of Realtors form that goes along with the listing agreement.
Well, see, there's a balancing act in there, and I don't want to be hard on the agents. Sometimes, we're almost like your assistant, but we're not. I mean, the coordinators work for the company, and we don't want to be jerks about it. But if your seller sends you an email that says, "Hey, Chris, go ahead and change the price from 200 to 225," and you forward that to listings, if it's identifiable that is the seller who sent that, like they get a signature line or their address is in, we'll change
Email
that.
addresses, yeah, yeah.
Now, if it comes from pdq@hotmail.com and they don't sign it, we're not going to know.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to question that because we have documents. And I just had another brain fart from 30 years ago. We had a, Angelique, you'll remember, we had a girl we hired named Victoria. We were audited by the Florida Real Estate Commission. And the girl was really cool. And we always did a really good job on our files. And we really got along. And she was amazed at how well we did. But she pointed out some things we could be better at. So we ended up hiring her as our full-time employee. And she set up our back office systems to make sure we were compliant with the real estate commission. Now imagine doing 3,000 transactions, 3,000 nothing. We do 34,000 transactions a year. If you count listings taken and expirations, contracts canceled, contracts pending, contracts closed, there's thousands and thousands of transactions going through the back office. And with, knock on wood, never a FREC violation, right? So things are going well. And so we do things and we'll bend the rules. We don't want to be jerks about it. But if John Smith at hotmail.com sends me a listing and I know John Smith's a seller and he says, change the price from 200 to 225, we'll do that for you. But if it's not clear, we're going to question you on it because we got to answer to a higher power, which is the real estate commission, which a lot of you don't realize because you're not playing that game. Right. So I think that we lose track of that too. So the back office is protecting the brokerage, which is then ultimately protecting you too.
Yeah.
And I think that's the change that we all have to understand.
And something else that happened yesterday.
Just yesterday, all these things happened?
Yeah, actually. Yeah. Yesterday,
Things happen every day.
Yeah, it happens every day. But most fresh in my mind. I jumped on to help with listings because contracts was slower yesterday. Jasmine was slammed with the listings. So
Wait till
I
you
did a
see hot
listing. Yeah, look at the hot sheet to prove it.
Listings.
I did a listing, sent out the live email, sent out the thank you letter, and the agent replies and says, this wasn't supposed to go live until tomorrow. And I'm looking in the file for any notification of that. I asked Chris, I'm like, did he submit something? Like, did he write a message when it was submitted? Nothing. So this goes into communication is really important. If
Were
you're
your
listening-
mind reading skills not working yesterday?
No,
And
unfortunately they
remember, we
weren't.
go by the dates on the listing agreement, right?
So
the
his
start
listing
date
agreement was dated for-
yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, his listing agreement was dated for yesterday. He sent in photos, remarks, his paperwork was all ready. And had he sent in an email or a .lu message and said, hey, can this go live on Friday? We're getting ready, blah, blah, blah. There's tenants. We would have noted the file. We would have noted our listing spreadsheet. I'm gonna switch over and just show you this real quick.
You should show the listing. I was just gonna say,
Yeah, so the listings to be loaded spreadsheet is our Bible in the back office, right? So it needs to be cleaned up a little bit. There's some old stuff on here that needs to be taken care of, but the gist of it is that you submit.
That's what
a
we're
listing.
dealing with.
Yeah, this is what we're dealing
That's
with,
the
right?
gist of it.
So
photos, no paper. You're going so fast we can't see, Sam. So
Well, I'm
sold data
trying
or
to get-
listings on hold. That's stuff that you guys sent in that they have to remember to put in at a future date. And it's one of
So-
many because they're dealing with 8 offices and 400 salespeople, right? Scroll up and down and so the other headings you have on that sheet.
yeah, so this
Listings,
is the main
missing
section.
remarks and photos. We got the listing. They want it to go live, but we don't have remarks and we don't have photos, so we can't work with it. But we
So-
can't forget about it. I can't put it on my desk over here with the pile of 14 others or 18 or 24 or whatever that number is. Right? So they keep all this stuff organized and you don't realize this as an individual. And that's why we're kind of doing this class today to say, hey, you know,
So
empathy.
the agent turns in a listing, Chris will review it for, compliance. And then he adds it to the spreadsheet. He puts who the agent is, if they have PA, if there's photos, when we receive the paperwork, and if there's anything needed to go live. So in this case, not to put Heidi on blast, but we needed proof of ownership. So that's noted here. For this one, we need the listing agreement signed and initialed, right? So this one.
A little thing.
Yeah. So like this one, we just need photos. So this one's going to be ready to move up. If you hear us use that lingo, that's what it means. We're moving it up to be entered. So once it hits this top section, it's ready to go. So, for future dated ones. So this has an MLS waiver until 5/11, but it needs photos. So on the 11th, it'll get moved up to this green section. And then once we get photos, it'll be ready to be entered, right? So this is a very extensive list. This is just a glimpse of it.
Look, photos, no paperwork. What the hell do you do with that?
Yeah,
Here's a bunch of photos.
we hold it and we wait until we get the paperwork. So this one is on hold until we hear from Ken, right? So he's got photos, but his paperwork's not been turned in yet and it's on hold. He let us know. So it's important when you communicate with us because that gets put here. So when you email us a new listing agreement, when you email us a new remarks, those get added here. So when Jasmine's entering it, she has that information at the ready. So really communication is really important to us because we're only as good as the information we get. So, things do happen sometimes, boxes can be checked and that can happen, slip of the fingers, but really we're going off of the data forms and we'll get into it, but there are sections that are required that a lot of times aren't filled out. So we have defaults. If other is allowed to be chosen, we'll choose it so we can move on and get the listing in and not hold it up for you. And there's a couple of reasons we do that. And it's mainly because timing, right? So if we stopped and asked you for every little thing as we're going that's required by MLS, like appliances or front exterior features, right? So we stop you and ask you for all of those things. You had the chance to fill out the data form already and you didn't. So chances are you're going to tell us you don't know. And the other chance is that you're not going to reply in a timely manner. And then that listing is going to be held up and we don't want that. So we go ahead and make it live with other checked with the defaults in place. And you're more than welcome to update that throughout the life of the listing if you get that information. I talk about room sizes too. Room sizes is a big one that's left blank. Master bedroom, kitchen, and living room are required. So we'll put the default of 10 by 10 for those 3 rooms because if we don't, MLS will not let us make the listing live. And we put in the realtor remarks at that time that its room sizes are approximate and need verification, and that's so MLS doesn't flag us for having incorrect information because you can get flagged for that, right? So we do bend a lot. There are a lot of things that we do that MLS doesn't technically allow, but we can get away with. So we try to skirt the system when we can, but there are instances when we can't.
Well,
So
let me add to that. So there's a class called MLS entry and you're muted, Ansley. There's a class called MLS entry that's required by the board, which we don't require you to take. But every once in a while, somebody of you take it and you find out what the MLS requirements are. And then I get notified that you've taken the course, but you've not been given admin access. We don't give any agents admin access because we want to control the narrative. And we're not going to change that. That's just the way it is. But it wouldn't be a bad idea for you all to take that class so you understand what the rules are, right? And this is important because, like I said, I know, and this is my position as a brokerage, Paul and Mary's listing will be treated the same way as John and Sue's listing, or Joe and John's listing, or whatever protocols you want to use. Everything's being treated the same way, right? So it's really imperative that you guys do a good job, because if they put in 10 by 10 for the living room, that's kind of a bad way to operate, right? And it is your responsibility. You're marketing this listing. It's your reputation on the line. And the way you market your listings is a representative of how you operate. And other people look at that.
Sam, will you click on the listings to be loaded real quick? I just want to make one point before you go. Look at all of the, like, so it moves to the top. So at the top right here, she has at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 listings that are at the top, with another 13 to 20 that can move up at any given time. So when you send something in at 4 o'clock on a Friday and say, I need this done ASAP, there are at times 13 to 20 other listings ahead of yours that need to be input, edited, changed, added, updated in any way, shape, or form. And that's why it's not just easy for you to send something in. I sent it. Why didn't they get to it? Why wasn't it done? I needed it done now. They're doing the best they can. And this is everything they're managing. And at any given time, they can have 5 to 10 listings that get completed and need to get put in. And that could be at 4 o'clock on a Friday when you need one simple change done. But there's all these others that are ahead of you as well.
That have been waiting for 3, 4, 5 days.
Correct. So it's a process, and they're doing everything they can to make sure they do exactly what Craig said, make sure that everything is treated exactly the same and they get it in correctly.
And yelling
What can
doesn't help. Yelling at us doesn't make us do anything faster.
what can help with that though, with speeding up the process, is like when I'm entering a listing, I can get out of it and go into another one, but it kind of like jumbles my brain up because I have to completely get out of the listing I'm working on and go in it and get into yours to change something. Because a lot of the time I send the live email and the agent will reply just to me and tell me to do it. So it can help with that and getting things done faster is if you reply to the listings email, which it says on the live email, and put your changes there, because that's Chris. And so he's not usually loading a listing, that's usually me. And so he can jump in and change it real quick. But when you ask me to do it, I have to like exit out of my listing and go back into yours, which I don't mind doing, but that can kind of slow down the process of everything. And another thing I wanted to say,
Email, and you're we're in your email and back and forth, and
yeah. And
God, how
another
many
thing I
emails
wanted
do you
to
guys
say
get a
about-
day?
Oh, a million.
A lot.
But about communication, like I don't think we have anything about here in photos. So I just want to say about communication. Something that's been happening like a couple times last week and every so often is that I'll make a listing live and the agent will say the photos are wrong. And I think a really big thing with that is that when you're changing your photos in the Google Drive, you have to let the photos email know, which is Chris, that you're updating the photos. Because if you're not letting us know that you're updating them, our process is that Chris sees the photos on his end. I don't have access to them. And then he'll download them and upload them to a drive that I have. So if you don't tell us the photos are updated, I just have the photos that he's previously uploaded before, which I know is kind of confusing. And I know that's hard to understand, which is pretty much communication is really important. So whenever you change anything, just let us know.
I'm glad you brought that up because we do. So we have a shared Google Drive within the back office. We have access to property photos. So what happens is Shannon or your photographer will send you photos. You have a Google Drive of them. You share them to photos. Chris downloads them, formats them for Melissa's standards, and puts them in a new folder in this shared drive for us to download and upload into MLS. So what happens is,
Say it again, because I don't think anybody understands how much time.
yeah,
that
there's a
takes.
lot of moving parts.
And how
So-
annoying it is to do that. And how many, I know an agent who left us for about 3 days and got a listing and had to input themselves. and they quit the other company that went to for more money and came back to us because they don't want to do the work. Right?
Yeah, so-
There's a lot of work that goes on here that we're a little spoiled about because you guys have never done it. But and
MLS
imagine
will have to-
managing that many files a day or a week or a month,
Mhm.
right?
So what happens is, you know, this is what we received from the agent. They said they're good to go. But then within the week of their listing going live or them sending in photos in their Google Drive, they renumber the photos. Don't tell anyone because they assume that it's been shared. Chris doesn't go back and check that, right? Because he's not notified and it's not part of our process. We don't check up. So,
And he's on to the next 14.
and he's on to the next 14. So if you make photos, changes to your photos after you've sent them and said they're good to go, please, please, please reshare your folder and let photos know, because if not, we're going to go off of what's in here, what's already been processed, and it doesn't update with what you're updating. Right. So there's a lot in here. And
It also helps if when you send the photos, if you send them in a Google Drive, because I've done photos a couple times, like when they go on vacation, I'll hop on photos and do them. And there are so many times that agents will send photos to the email, like one by one, in an email, like 20 attachments. And it makes it a lot harder. It makes the process twice as long.
Yeah.
And so it really helps us if you just send all your photos in a Google Drive.
Mhm. And if you don't know how to do that, email photos and say, I have photos, how do I get them in Google Drive? And Chris will explain it to you and help you out. And it does take time away, but it's easier to do that than figure it out when you send them an email is not ordered and then expect them to be in a specific order. So when you put them in Google Drive, you can rename them and put them in the order you want. It's very clear.
I wanted to ask that question. I don't know the answer to this one. Because in MLS, you can label the photos, living room, dining room, all that stuff. How does that happen?
Yeah, so if you let us know, and I can say this is incomplete and show the process, but I will do that. It won't let me do it. Hold on.
You have to put an agent name, yeah.
I just want you all to realize how spoiled you are. I don't mean this in a rude way. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the back that you don't have to mess with that I hope you don't take for granted, because there's a lot of people working really hard to make sure this was well.
I don't know if that'll work. That didn't work. Right, so usually there'd be up to 100 photos in here, but we have the option to add a description in here. And so we have to go one by one when you do that, but we're happy to do it if you let us know that you want it to be done. I'm not sure if agents have access to do it themselves. This might be
Should.
something.
Yes, I know, I do.
Yeah,
When
I think
look-
it's,
If I pull up my listing, if you go onto your my listing section of MLS and click on the active listing, when you click on your listing at the bottom, one of the buttons is manage photos. You can go in and you can enter a description into each of those photos and type whatever you want, make it sound and look as pretty as you want.
Right.
So
That's
they
the point I
can-
wanted to bring up. I know the agents can do that, and you should.
Yes,
Mhm.
Wait, no. Can I just say that when you do that and you start moving photos around in MLS?
yeah, don't move photos around.
correct.
Because MLS is MLS, Realtor.com, and Zillow. That's
And
it.
150 other sites.
No,
Mhm.
that's those feeds. And then Dash, which is our platform that we communicate with Century 21 Corporate on, Dash is what feeds 150 to 170 other websites.
Mhm.
So when if you go in there and resort your photos in MLS, it's not going to look the same
Yeah.
on this over here, and your seller is going to catch it, and they're going to say, "What's going on?" Or
Yeah,
okay,
you can add descriptions all you want. It won't mess with anything. But if you rearrange or reorder your photos, email photos and let them know exactly what you did so we can match it. And when you do that, you have to be careful because MLS has a certain rule about placement of photos. Like the first one has to be front exterior that shows the roof. And I've heard that that's because at one point in time, somebody tried to sell the house, it got sold, and the tenant or the new buyer went to go see it and there was no roof on the house. And it's because they took a picture in such a way that it didn't show that it didn't have a roof, right? So now the punishment for that is not punishment, but the penalty for that is that every photo has to have a full front exterior that shows the roof, shows the door.
Yeah, I thought it had to show the door. I didn't know about the roof, but that's a good thing to know.
I'm that's what I've heard. I don't know if that's true. Don't quote me, but there's exceptions to that. If it's a waterfront property,
It's got a view, you can take a view shot first, but then the second photo has to be the front elevation.
and if it's an aerial photo, you can have that. So we know what those rules are, and they're in place for a reason. And we don't want to burden you with those rules, right? You don't have to know all that. The main thing you have to know is front exterior has to be the first photo. So Nancy just said, I didn't realize we can manage them through MLS. Thought that was just admin. There are certain things that agents can do to their listings. Please don't go in there and have free reign. Because it messes with stuff that we're doing. There's a bigger picture. Like you can load your own open houses. But if you load your own open houses, they're not getting loaded in Dash and not getting fed out through multiple other sites, right? So if you're loading your own open house in MLS, still let listings know so we can follow up with that process and add it to those systems.
Because remember we talked about John and Mary's listing being treated the same as Paul and Sue's listing? Same thing. If it's on MLS this way, it should be on Zillow that way. It should be on homesandline.com that way. And it should be on whatever other website the same way.
And Nancy said, I thought you could do it from the Google Drive. Does that transfer if changed in Google Drive? No.
No, you got
That's when you have to tell us you updated them.
So something else I don't want to miss in chat is Donna wrote in and said, MLS told me last week that room sizes are no longer required. That's not true. I don't know what capacity they told you that in. But I can show you right here that anything in yellow is required, right? So this matches with the MLS data form. Your red fields are what shows up as yellow for us, right? So this is what I was kind of talking about. If exterior construction isn't marked by you, we're going to choose other, right? So if you know that it's block, check that it's block. If you know that it's stucco, check that it's stucco, because if not, it's going to be defaulted to other and your listing isn't going to be as accurate as it could be.
And then let me just add to that because, and it's wrong to do it this way, but some people narrow their search criteria so much, right? If they're looking for only block houses, they might put that in. And if your listing says other and it is block, it won't pull up in a block search because other was checked, right? It's like when it drives me crazy. Mirror Bay is one word. When people put Mirror Bay 2 words in, it doesn't pull up in a search, right? So everything's very, very important. So if you have the answer, put it in because you don't know how the public or the other realtors are searching their criteria. And if they're searching for a block home and we didn't put block, it ain't going to pull up. And that's a big deal when you're competing for a listing to expose other agents for, improperly loading their listings, really.
And I have this down the slideshow, but I wanted to pull it up since we talked about rooms for a minute.
It's yellow. It's required.
Yeah, she said it was an MLS staff and they said it was a suggestion from the agents and they acted on it.
Hasn't been updated yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in practice. Because if you click here, it'll tell you that required room types are living room or great room, kitchen, and master bedroom. So it hasn't hit our MLS. If that's a change that's coming, that's great. But it's for the time being, that's not the case. So something that I want to bring up here is that we can't type in whatever we want to type in, right? So on the data form, let me go to here. On the data form, there's this whole section above the room sizes, and those are the actual choices that we can choose from, right? So when you're putting in your room features that it attaches to it's open to the kitchen, there's a chandelier, there's whatever you put here doesn't translate, and that's why we don't put it, because we don't have the option to. Anything that's on the MLS data form is what we have options to check. We can check multiple ones, right? So if there's a bath with a whirlpool and a breakfast bar, we can do that. And those are, set up there in a way. And same with floor covering. If you put something that's not here, we're going to put other because we don't have the option to type it in. So those things need to be talked about in your remarks. That's a great way to get them known If you want to talk about your living room is open to your kitchen, talk about it in your remarks. If you want to talk about the chandelier, talk about it in your remarks. Another thing, okay, so master bedroom, living room, kitchen are 10 by 10 if not provided. If you put a bunch of rooms and you don't have dimensions for them, we're not going to put them in MLS as 10 by 10. We're just going to leave them off completely. Like yesterday, the listing that I did, he had kitchen blank, he had master bedroom, and he put dining room. And so I did the two that were required. I left off the dining room because I'm not going to put that it's 10 by 10 and falsify that information if I don't have to, right? So just pay attention to your room sizes. And there are like electronic measuring things. I'm not sure what they are, but they're like laser pointers that you stand on one side of the room, you point it to the other side of the room, and it gives you the
Your
dimension.
cell phone has an app that you can download. There's multiple that you can just point it at a corner and point it at the other corner, and it'll give you a very, very close approximate measurement. I mean, within inches. It's actually pretty cool. So if you need that, you
And
can do that.
MLS always says everything's deemed reliable, but not guaranteed. So you don't have to be exact.
Mhm,
But to give somebody, if you had a big, great room, it'd be nice to feature that.
mhm. Yeah, so just pay attention to the room types because, you know, we'll get like a dining nook and that doesn't exist in what we can choose. So we default that to dinette. You know, there's stuff like that that happens. And if you are putting, if you're putting the room as master bedroom, but putting bathroom features, we won't put those there because there's an option for the master bathroom. And those room features go to that room, not the master bedroom. So there are things that we won't do because it's not correct. So we'll skip it.
And
Yeah.
something I see a lot is that people will put their garage sizes in the room sizes, but there's actually a spot for it by the garage where it says like garage, yes, no. There's garage dimensions there.
Mhm.
But those are not garage dimensions in square feet. It's the same thing like 10 by 10 or 12 by 10. Because when you put it in square feet, I can't really make that into dimensions. So I kind of just leave it off.
Yeah, and if you're marking garage yes, tell us how many spaces there are because that becomes a required field, right? So if I mark yes, and then I go to
Also has to
validate
tell if
this,
it's attached. Yeah.
all of these things become required, right? So that's I'm glad I just validated this because this shows you all of the stuff that is required, right? So we can't save this listing without something being in these fields. And when we do pull in a listing, we're auto-filling it from the tax record. So most of the tax stuff fills in, not a guarantee, especially if it's a new construction listing, this will not auto-populate.
And sometimes the land and tax field, like for some older stuff, it'll have the tax year as 2019. And I can't use tax year from 2019, has to be from 2021 or above. So anything below that, like I have to get your verification on. So if you can take anything from this meeting, please take to fill out your land and tax page, because it is the page that is left blank the most often. And yes, MLS auto populates a lot, but personally for me, it makes me a little bit uncomfortable because like, I'm not a real estate agent. I'm just being real, I'm not. And so I can try to find some of this info if it's left blank, but it makes me a little nervous because as much as you don't want your listing to be wrong, I don't want your listing to be wrong. So if you fill it out, it really helps me out just so I can verify that everything that MLS has is correct. Because just the other day, I had a listing where the subdivision name was wrong, the city was wrong, and that was just because MLS was pulling up the wrong thing. But the agent had that stuff there, so I was able to fix it as I did it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's something else that happens like right now, these floor number, total number of floors, building name aren't required. But if I come in here and say that it's a condo and I revalidate this, all of this information then becomes required too. So the data form doesn't do a good job of explaining that because how do you do that on paper form, right? So if it is a condo, fill in the condo information, right? So the community information then becomes required. Normally it's not, but when it's a condo, all of this stuff, we'll choose none because usually it's not filled out. But you know, that's a loss to you because what if there's a community boat ramp? What if there's fishing?
Well, let's
You
talk
know-
about that, Sam, because I think it's important for the agents to understand. This is okay for you to sit down with the homeowner and say, I need help with this.
Mhm.
You know your condo association better than I do. You know, how many floors, how many parking spaces do you have? Do you have a storage closet? Do you have this? Do you have that? It's okay to ask them. It's important because they're the seller. All we are is an agent. The lawsuit is going to be between the buyer and the seller. Okay, that's the fact. That's real estate law. So you're representing the seller. So they've got a part and play in this game. And it's 100% fine for you to involve them in this information. Right? It's actually better. You're not considered less valuable because you need their help. Right? It's okay because we're in this together. We're their, I don't want to say servant, but we're their agent. We're not them. And we don't want to misrepresent them. So it's okay to ask them. And I think a lot of agents are afraid, well, if I don't know that this condo's got this, then they're not going to hire me. No, you're just representing them well and making sure the max pet weight is 50 pounds because if my dog's 65 pounds, I can't live there. And I don't want to find that out after I go to contract, right? I want to find that out before. And then that's just the stuff that drives, who was I talking to last night? That we were just, oh, it was Susie. She's under contract to buy some land. And nobody did the due diligence before they put it on the market to find out that there's no ingress and egress. So she's taken it upon herself as the buyer to verify. I said, stop it. You need to go to the seller and say, your friggin' obligation is to provide ingress and egress. It's your job. So we blew that deal up and guess what the seller did? They asked for an extension so they can negotiate with the neighbors to get ingress and egress rather than her having to do it herself, right? So this is like why I talk about certified pre-loved homes and all that stuff, to have these conversations with the customers before it all goes on the market. So we don't get on the market, go under contract, and then find a problem later on, right? Everything, prior proper planning yields positive results. And this is prior proper planning right here.
But
Sorry.
I'm glad you brought up the pet weight because condos, when you check yes for having a pet in condos, it also makes the max pet weight a required field. And if you don't put anything there, I will look through your condo docs and I'll try to find the spot where it talks about pets and pet weight. But sometimes I can't find it and I look through all your stuff. And so our default is to put the pet weight as 101. And maybe it's 20 pounds, but I have no idea. So just please, when you're doing different stuff like condos, just think of it like you're the buyer, the buyer's agent, everything that you would want to know buying a condo, fill that in. Like I would want to know what floor I'm living on, how many floors the building has, all that stuff. Just think about it that way. And it helps a lot to get everything you need filled in.
Well, I think the communication goes both ways, Jasmine. If you make an assumption that the pet weight is 101, why don't you let the agent know, hey, by the way, you left pet weight blank. I defaulted to 101. I don't know if that's right or wrong. Please update me on this, right? So if you make an assumption, then tell the agent you made an assumption. At least then we, as a back office, have a defense when there's a problem. How come we lied about the pet weight? Because the agent didn't tell us. And then I'm sorry to sound this way. We can point to the agent and say, sorry, the agent screwed up, not us. You know what I mean?
So do you want us to add that to the live email and
that
say
in-
these are the fields that
That would be
didn't?
perfect. These are the fields that we made shit up on.
And
Okay.
that requires the agents checking and replying to their emails.
Well, should be a requirement anyway.
And those could become pretty lengthy emails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There could, that, I'm just gonna say that could put a complete big load on the staff there because there's a lot of stuff once they click, that's always going to be blank. Now they're having to go, all right, when I click this, there's these 5 things you didn't give me. When I click this, there's these 10 things you didn't give me. When I click this, there's all these other options you didn't give me.
Well, I think we
Yeah.
could use discernment if it's a big one, like a pet weight. If it's a room dimension or something like that, I think we can skirt on those things, but
Because like, for example, this is one of the biggest sections when it's anything, when it's in an HOA, when it's a single family home in an HOA, when it's a townhome in an HOA, when it's anything. I went through the systems, and yes, when property can be leased, yes, these fields become required. Minimum lease period, lease restrictions, yes or no. Association approval, yes or no. How many years of ownership prior to leasing, yes or no. And then
Once again, this is the stuff that's critical in today's world. How many people now are buying investment properties?
a
I'd say
lot.
at least a third, 35%.
Mhm.
And what do they want to do?
Lease it.
Lease it. Now, I just had one the other day, and what did it happen? Oh, the day it was, the closing was supposed to be, I don't remember the exact day. It was supposed to be Thursday, and it didn't close. The funds didn't come in till Friday. On Friday, the seller opened their mail. No shit. And the mail said, hey, it's your HOA. We just had a vote and we changed the rental restrictions. You now have to own the house for 2 years before you can rent it. Now, this house closed on Thursday, theoretically, but the funds didn't transfer. And under FAR 6, the funds transferring triggers the closing. So it didn't close yet. And the seller was a high conscious seller and said, I don't want to get involved in a lawsuit, undo the deal. And we canceled the closing because it was investor and we knew damn well they were going to rent the house. And now the HOA rules were in effect and they hadn't closed yet. So once they closed, the seller knew, and had the seller known and not disclosed, now we got a Johnson versus Davis case, right? And we got major damages. The house is going to rent for $2,000 a month. They got to hold it for 2 years. So that's $48,000 in damages, not counting all the other attorney's fees and stuff on top of that. And our seller would have been screwed, right? And we didn't, and the seller didn't. And the seller should have known, because 90 days before, there's a notice that went out that said, hey, we're going to have a vote on this topic. But the seller didn't read their HOA emails like a lot of others don't. And that's it. So those little tiny mistakes make a big deal. And so you can't rely on the staff to know these details. And Jasmine, I honor you for looking up the condo docs and the HOAs. And that's a big, not your
When they're
job.
provided.
If they're,
Also.
yeah, right.
Yeah. And it's not your job, right? But you care enough that you do that, but you really shouldn't have to. It really is the
Yeah.
agent's job to do some of these things, right? And I'm not trying to get hard on the agents here, but I want to back up the staff.
So we're kind of running out of time. So I wanted to touch on a few things. Signs, big issue. It's not just our MLS, it's the National Association of Realtors. NAR's clear cooperation rules. It's a new policy 8.0 states that a property must be listed in the MLS within 1 business day of public marketing. So you can public market all you want, but then your listing has to go into MLS within 24 hours, or you're going to be hit with a big hefty fine. That's not something we can just update real quick and get you away with it. It's an automatic fine. It's hefty, and it's an escalating policy. So the more it happens to you, the heftier the fine. So what we're trying to do, the sign companies take 2 to 3 days turnaround time from when we order the sign, right? So the listings team, when you have your paperwork, you're ready, you're getting ready to go live, you're going to go live on Friday, let's say. If you turn your paperwork in on Tuesday, the listing agreement signed, the seller's property disclosure is signed, the data form is started at least, and we have enough that we can guarantee that the listing will in fact go live on Friday, we will go ahead and order the sign up so that it can try to be there as soon as the listing goes live as possible. There's a lot of errors, a lot of room for errors, a lot of wiggle room here, because the sign company is not an exact science. It's a third-party company. We don't know their schedule. We can't just ask and they tell us their schedule. So we're going off the basis that it's a 2 to 3 day turnaround. They're closed on Sundays. They're closed on Mondays. So if you have a listing that goes live on Friday, we order the sign up on Friday, that sign's not going to be there at least until Tuesday, Wednesday.
Well,
So
you're
if-
assuming we only work with one sign company. There's multiple sign companies too that have different rules and different angles.
Yeah. So yeah, in a perfect, yeah. So they all have that same 2 to 3 day window though, ish. So if that listing goes live on Friday and we order the sign up then, because you turn in your paperwork on Friday and we get it up the same day, your sign's not going to go up. If you turn in your paperwork for that Friday listing a couple days in advance, give us a head start, that sign could potentially be up by that Friday instead of waiting till Tuesday. But it takes communication and it takes your paperwork being complete, because we're not going to risk if we're waiting on proof of ownership, if we're waiting on the listing agreement to be signed, if we're waiting on this and that, we're not going to go ahead and pre-order the sign because there's no guarantee to us that the listing will actually hit the market. And then that sign order has been ordered up and it's too late to turn it around. The sign company's got their thing, they're going, and it's a lot on them.
And now
it's a
we're
lot-
publicly marking a listing that's not on the
Correct.
MLS.
That's the
Right.
big point to make. When the sign is in the yard, you're publicly marketing the property.
And if
What
somebody
the-
turns you in, you're over.
Yep, you have one business day to get it in. If
So
that
that
sign
means you
goes
need the
up.
listing agreement signed. That means then you need the photos to be done. That means you need the seller's property disclosure to be ready, right? So we're trying to protect you as well as the brokerage. And so we know that sellers don't understand signs. We know that, you know, it's hard to explain to them, but this NAR's clear cooperation rules, you can Google it and you can send them the link and try to explain it to them. I had Jackie Stone call me the other day and she's like, you know, I have a listing and the seller wants me to do something and I know it goes against the rules. Can you point me in the direction of that so I can send that to them and have the talking point? Gladly, I emailed her, right? So if we can guarantee that your listing will go live, we'll order the sign up ahead of time to try to beat it. But then if we do that and then, oops, the seller decides I don't want to list until next week, let us know as soon as possible because we need to get the sign company in order to not put that up, right? So
And that may work and it may not, depending on their schedules and their routes. So sometimes we
just-
can catch them and sometimes we can't.
I would use best practice. Once that sign is ordered, it's not going to come down for 1 to 3 days. And if you're publicly marketing that property, you need to count on the sign company not being able to get out there for 2 to 3 days to remove it. So we are going to be publicly marketing a property that's not going to be an MLS, which is, could be a $2,500 fine.
We'll call it what it is, but get a pair of pliers and put your ass in your car and drive out and take the panel off the signpost. Right?
Yeah.
You caused the problem. We're not going to solve this. We're not going to solve it. You go take the sign. If the signpost is up, it's not the end of the world. If the sign panel's in the yard, we're publicly marketing. Right? If there's a yellow white post in the yard, now it's a white post, then it doesn't say what company it is. But you go and take the sign panel off, and now you're not publicly marketing anymore. And then you go back out and put it back up when their listing agreement signed.
And Nancy wrote in and said, shouldn't the sign go up after it goes live? Yeah, it should.
But just the
And we're-
expectations are set, or need to be set properly.
Yeah. Yeah, we do try to get it up after it goes live or the day that it's going live, but there's so much room for error there that it's hard to guarantee what the sign company is going to do. So, you know, we are trying our best to make it as soon as possible for you. And sometimes that does go up ahead of time because something gets changed and the listing gets delayed, right? So just communication. And then something else is that some agents do this already, but the listings team will send you a preview of your listing before it goes active to get your final approval. If you're worried about how the listing will look, if you're worried about entry, whatever, errors, let the listings team know. Send an email to listings@c21be.com before your listing goes live when you submit your listing paperwork and say, hey, can you send me a preview of this before it goes live so I can review it before it hits the market? Gladly, right? We do this and I want everyone to know that we can do this. So what will happen is the listing gets loaded to the spreadsheet. Jasmine can see that it needs to be preloaded and the notes are there to send a preview before it goes live. So what happens is she'll save the MLS number, she'll save a printout of that and send it to the agent via email and say, hey, this is ready. Let me know if anything needs to be changed or if it's ready to go live. So when
And I don't want to
expecting-
say this out loud, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. That means you need to reply to the email.
That's, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when you're expecting a listing to go live and you've asked for a preview, be mindful and, you know, respond to your email and review the listing preview in a timely manner. So your listing isn't sitting in limbo unnecessarily, especially if it's towards the end of the day that it's happening. Yeah, so I didn't know we could preview the listing. So yeah, that's why we wanted to bring it up because some agents do this already and some I know would benefit from it just to give you peace of mind. And sometimes the seller wants to review it too. So we know that there's some stipulations that mocking my hands. When, you know, you have the listing ready to go live and you send it to your seller, get them to have the expectation that they need to be on it and reply to, because I know that sometimes you're not responding to us because you're waiting on a response from them. So there's a lot of moving parts, and that's just what it is. There's a lot of moving parts, and we're trying our best to get it in as soon as possible for you. So if we're sitting there waiting for your response to the email to tell us it's good to go, and you knew it was good to go an hour ago, but you just didn't get around to emailing us, we're not mind readers.
We're going to share this slide deck with everybody. We'll send it
Yeah.
in an email, and we'll also add it to our resource center.
There's a lot in here. Yeah.
And I just want to say, I've got to jump out. I've got a meeting at the South Tampa office that I got to head to, but I want to say mostly that we love the agents. We love you guys. Without you guys, none of us have jobs. We want to do everything we can to support you guys. Communication is really important. And most of all, we're nice. We're nice. We want to help. We do this with love and with smiles. I promise you. So just we're nice. Okay. So be nice, play nice, communicate. We'll all get along. Everybody will be happy. Be great.
You're getting lots of nice comments online. Jasmine, it's a pleasure seeing you. I want to make sure you guys are all invited to our top agent event next week at Top Golf. I'll send Susie a note to make sure you get an invite. But I think you need to show up and associate with all the agents too. Chris, I wish you didn't talk so much. It's really, it's hard.
He's like, do I have to talk tomorrow? I was like, you can talk about photos. He's like, no.
So guys, I guess the thing is, there's a lot being done for you in the back office, and I just want you to know that they care. They really do care. And it's a mutual respect. It's almost like they're your employees, and you need to treat them well, or they're not gonna work for you. Right? So, except they're not your employees, they're our employees, and they're covering the company's butt, but treat them like they're your employees, and they'll work for you really well. And it goes without saying, but treat them poorly and you could easily go to the bottom of the list. I mean,
We aren't going to do that to you.
and
but-
you don't need to bring them cookies or chocolate or anything, but
No.
they're happy to do their job, and they do it all. And you're getting lots of nice comments. They're amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you. All for our back office. Yeah, this just need to be said. So Chris, great idea. Sammy, great presentation. Anything else you want to make sure we cover? Because I know you had more in your slide deck.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe we can also after this, I can get Jimmy or someone to send out like a poll and get some feedback, things that they want some more information on. We could do this on another Friday to expand on it and keep doing
Yeah.
it, because there's a lot in this slide deck that we didn't even touch on.
Yeah.
And this was really just to give you an idea of how much is really done on that side and how much you might be missing from your side and why the communication is so important. So is there anything else that you want to make sure you point out? Because I mean, we could go as long as we need to. I know people will start signing off.
Sold data entry is a good one. I mean, when you sell a FSBO or you sell a new home construction and it wasn't in the MLS, and you want credit to give the appraiser information. Remember, the MLS is a public data system, right? So if we're going to do a SPA or CMA on a house, and we know that we sold I'm not gonna say Lennar, a DR Horton for 425, and DR Horton didn't have it in the MLS, and we put it in, then we can use that comp. So a sold only data sheet. What does that mean, Sam? You
Yeah,
fill out
so-
the MLS profile as if it was a listing.
Mhm. Yeah,
Right.
so sold data entry only is a way to get you buy side credit, right? So you're on the buyer side, and this doesn't give the listing agent any credit. So it's not for when you have a listing that goes on market or that goes under contract before it hits the market and then it closes. So when that happens, we still have to enter it like it's your listing, and we have to append it and close it out like normal. Sold data entry is only when you're on the buy side. And Jasmine will send an email. So whenever, there's a new construction closing or it fits their criteria, she'll send an email through Loop and say, hey, do you want this entered as sold data entry only? And I
Yeah.
know that she gets a lot of questions about what is that? What does it mean? She tries to explain it. They don't understand it. So if you
My
want
wording that I send, I try my best to make it as clear and concise. I send the same thing to everyone every time they just sold data entry only. So if you have a lot of them and you get my little thing that I send that explains how to do it every single time, it's not a slight to you. It's just my default. So you don't have to worry about, oh, how do I know if it's sold data entry only? Because I'll let you know, I'll send you the message. But this kind of explains what exactly it is. But the most important thing is that when you're doing a sold data entry only, if you could just make sure all the required fields are filled out in your data form, you want to make another folder just with the data form. Once you're done with that, you want to submit that whole folder to the listings email. It'll get reviewed, and then you also want to send a photo to the photos email of the front exterior of the home. Especially if you have a new construction, you want to make sure everything is filled out, because when it's a new construction, sometimes MLS doesn't have that property in there. So I have to start from a completely blank listing, which means nothing is auto-populated. I do everything from scratch. So that helps me out a lot. And yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so, and most of the times when it's sold data entry only, it is new construction. And, you know, we know that it's not your listing, but that information should still be available to you in some form to fill out, right? So you know it better than we do. And even if you barely know it, that means we're gonna barely know it even less, right? So the main point is that like Laura Mesa Wolf does a lot of sold data entry only because she's doing a lot of new construction contracts, right? So she comes to mind when I think of this. She'll have a closing and then she submits her data form and says, hey, back office, can this be entered in MLS for buy side credit? Perfect. She knows what she's doing. But then there's, you know, you don't really do new construction. It happens, you know, infrequently. And then you get this message and you're like, what is that? So this will be in the resource center too, but it's basically just a way to give you buy side credit. It doesn't affect award credit for Century 21.
It's really market data.
Yeah, it's just for statistical purposes.
Exactly.
That it's entry only. It's really just statistical purposes for comps. And if people are looking you up, they can see that you're doing deals. That there's real no benefit to you. It's not for award credit. Your award credit is taken care of in Dash. It's another system. So it's really just statistical purposes and to show that you have activity going on.
You know, someday, Sam, we should show them what Dash is like too.
Yeah, we could.
It's important because just we're talking about MLS because that's the big feed, but there's a whole nother system. They double data, which really pisses me off because
Yeah.
Century wants to fix this for us yet. But we have to double enter all this data again into another system called Dash, which feed and load all the photos again. And that's why we don't give you MLS access, because if you had access to MLS, you would change MLS, but you could possibly forget to remind us that you did that, hypothetically, and then we wouldn't know, and then Dash wouldn't be changed either. So then you would have to update two systems. You would have to load all this stuff in MLS, which I think you saw how complicated that is. Then you have to load it into Dash again, which is what they're doing that you don't even know about either. So I'm glad we brought
Yeah, and there's a lot I could talk about on the contract side of things and with Dotloop especially. So if y'all want, we can do another class, focus more on the contract side of things and what happens there. And, you know, you get an offer on your listing or you have a new buyer. Because I know that I talk to you guys a lot in Dotloop. And so yeah, we can do another one of these kind of more contract side of things and what's required and what happens there.
I think support that everybody knows the real, I mean, we are in business, right?
Mhm.
And you are the boss of your stuff, whether you have a transaction coordinator. Basically, you guys are provided a transaction coordinator, a limited transaction coordinator and a listing coordinator on every one of your files provided by the company, right? But you still need to take responsibility for the job. And the same thing on the, if you have a transaction coordinator like Barbara or Elizabeth or Chrissy, they don't take away your responsibility. You're still the agent and everything falls on you. So treat your staff, and I think you all are saying that. We're seeing really nice comments.
Yeah, because we can touch on closing stuff and, you know, we can touch on contracts. So we can definitely do this again.
That would be great.
That'd be awesome. Cool.
Cool.
We're a little over time, but not bad.
Awesome. Well, if anything else, we'll put together another class for you. We'll let you know what they'll be handling as far as the contract side of things, and how that process is. And if you have any specific questions that you want to ask, or work on getting an email or some type of survey out, so we know exactly what that is, and we can kind of really focus on those. Otherwise, it's a beautiful Friday, May 6th. Guys have an
Yeah.
awesome
Post your
weekend.
videos.
But yeah, Sam's video challenge, make sure that you're paying attention to that. It's on Beggins Agents. You got an email out as well. Also, it's Mother's Day weekend, so don't forget about all the mothers out there for Sunday. Happy Mother's Day to you all, and we're available if you need anything.
As always.
Bye.